Hi, I'm Sarah at Soul Stirring, and I'm here to share with you from the mysteries of consciousness so that we can be empowered to live a more intentional and deeply connected life. And today I'm here specifically to talk about the astrology for 2025. And if I could sum it up in one word, it would be change. This year is going to be really different to the last few years. And it's probably going to bring a lot of change and a lot more momentum and fast movement. And one of the big reasons for this is all of the outer planets are have either already changed sign or are changing sign. And so the outer planets like Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, their movement is so slow that they spend a long time in each zodiac sign. And so when they shift signs, it's sort of like the whole kind of archetypal atmosphere, the whole kind of energetic backdrop to everything else that happens changes. And so we start this year with Pluto just gone into Aquarius. So Pluto has moved from earthy, hardworking Capricorn into the air sign of Aquarius, revolution, community, technology, individuality. Um, all of these things are very Aquarian. And Pluto will be in Aquarius for like over 20 years. So it's going to be there until 2043 or about 20 years. So you can kind of see even with that, Pluto's movements are quite generational. So it's like we've moved into a new chapter now as a collective that this sort of that libidinal creative power and intensity that is Pluto is now moving in this field of Aquarius. And so a lot of things that are connected to this are going to be like technology is ruled by Aquarius. So a lot of revolutions and changes in technology, that's going to be a big area. Obviously, we're already seeing that with AI. Community and individuality is very Aquarian as well. So it's like being a collective. Community is very strong, but also it's not like a collective of all the same people. It's like really each individual showing up in their unique way to create the greater whole. And I actually wonder if all the sort of information that's being shared at the moment and our awareness growing around neurodiversity is kind of related to this as well. Because I think really we're at the beginning stages of understanding how everyone's brain processes things quite differently. And actually creating a society that does support that as difference rather than, something being wrong or you're just outside the norm. It's like I think we're starting a whole new way of organizing ourselves around things like that. And I think that's very Pluto and Aquarius. Um, what else on this? Um, yeah, I think just really like questions you can ask yourself. Something else as well with community and technology. Obviously, social media is going to be part of that. So I think it'll be really interesting over the next few years to see how things move and change in terms of social media. And obviously there's a lot of downsides to social media and a lot of problems, but it is a beautiful way to be connected and a beautiful way to build community that we haven't had before, and even like our global community, and being connected with people who actually, um, really resonate with your individuality and what you're interested in. Like I know I find this myself with astrology and consciousness and spirituality, and even learning about psychotherapy. Like all of that's been really empowered for me with the internet. And I think that's true for everyone, depending on, like with different areas of interest. So I think that's something that's really going to kind of have a lot of Shakti energy behind it now for the next 20 years. And it'll just be really interesting to see how that evolves. And of course, it's not a question of just being passive and noticing what happens. Like it's really lovely to be curious and watch how these energies are manifesting. But we can also get involved with it as well. So even for yourself, just thinking about how much of yourself and your individuality you bring to the communities you're in. Who are you in community? Do you um Like, are you generous in community? Do you hold back? All of these are kind of really good questions to be asking right now. And what is yours? What is your individual uniqueness that needs to be brought to the collective, that can be, really valuable for the collective? And even just how you use technology. Can you use it in a creative, life-giving way, or is it something that feels like it has power over you? So power again is very Plutonic. Both power and powerlessness, like both sides of that coin, are ruled by Pluto. So they're really good questions to be sort of considering as we begin this Pluto in Aquarius. Then the next, I should say, outer planet that's moving signs is Uranus. So Uranus has been in Taurus and it's going to move into Gemini in July. And so again, this is a move from Earth into air. Um, and I found it really interesting to reflect on Uranus and Taurus because Uranus is sort of like this lightning bolt of energy. Like it's really intense electricity, and it's also it brings huge change. It's like sudden, insights, sudden actions, sudden challenges that sort of smash old systems apart, and then everything is new, everything is different. Uranus also rules Aquarius, so it's sort of connected to technology, community, um, or yeah, technology and individuality, I should say, as well. But Uranus sort of brings this electricity and this change and this revolution to wherever it is. And it was in Taurus for a little bit, the second half of 2018. And then from 2019 until this July, it's been in Taurus. And of course, Taurus is the earth sign that sort of governs like physical resources. It's related to like how we earn resources, our physical security, money, what we value, how we value physical comfort. And it's a very feminine sign. And we've sort of had a huge revolution in terms of earned income and what we value and how we earn money. There's a lot more working from home now. There's a lot more, there's been a real rebalance collectively about, people valuing like work-life balance more, time with family more. So I think that we can really look back and start to um, see how much change Uranus brought when it was in Taurus, and even collectively around our resources and like energy resources. There was a lot of like things in the news about that over the last few years, the energy crisis and everything. And now as Uranus moves into Gemini this July, and it's going to be there until May 2033. I'm looking at my notes for all the dates. And so it's going to be there for like 10 years, and it's moving into air, first of all, just like Pluto has moved into air. And Gemini is also information, communication, kind of day-to-day sharing of knowledge and information, and sort of that day-to-day contact with people. And so, we can start to wonder about what that's going to mean. Uranus there is probably going to bring changes to how we share information, changes maybe to even learning and teaching and ways we communicate. Um, and also, this sort of shift from um, earth to air, it means things are sort of lighter and faster. Because obviously Earth is like it's really solid and grounded and really nurturing, and there's a lot of positive things we can say about it, but it's slow. Like it takes time to make progress, and it's quite methodical and solid. Whereas air is really kind of obviously really light, can move a lot quicker, it's a lot more dispersed. Um, and the other outer planet that's moving signs as well this year is Neptune. So Neptune is moving from Pisces into Aries. And it'll be there from, let me see, sorry. It'll be there from March, and it'll stay there until about October, and then it'll retrograde back into Pisces for a little bit. And then from next year, it'll be fully in Aries. So again, that's like from water to fire. So fire, really hot, kind of fast change, bit more intensity. So we can sort of imagine, like earth and water is mud, like really fertile, a lot of like uh, nutrients for growth, but like, wading through mud, like things are a bit sticky, a bit heavy. And so there could have been a bit of a sense the last few years of like slowness and like a bit of like having to push and kind of what's the word, like trudge through. Whereas now, especially when we kind of get into the midpoint of this year, when Uranus and Neptune have shifted signs, it's going to be a very different feel to the collective. Like it's going to be light, it's going to be fiery, it's going to be fast. Um, and I think that lightness especially is going to be really nice overall. I think that's something that we might really enjoy. And I'll say a bit more about um, Neptune in a minute, but also, so Saturn is going to enter Aries as well in May. Now, Saturn moves a little bit quicker. It's not quite such a like chapter change for our collective consciousness, but it's still again moving from water into fire, and it'll be in Aries for a while. So it just brings even more to this sort of collective shift. Um, and the big news really of this year in terms of actual aspects is Saturn and Neptune conjunct. I've talked a lot about this already because it's sort of like they're close enough now that it's starting to activate a bit, but they're not quite together yet. But Saturn and Neptune are going to come together very closely in the summer of this year, and this transit will continue into 2026. They'll hit completely conjunct. They'll be right together at 0 degrees of Aries in February next year. But this summer they're pretty much there, like they're really close for the whole summer. And so Saturn Neptune conjunct is it means the energies of Saturn and Neptune are sort of flowing as one, flowing together, and it's also the beginning of their next cycle together. So it's sort of like a conjunction when two planets are together. It's a bit like the new moon of the cycle. So there's like a seeding and a beginning, and obviously an ending to the last cycle. And Neptune and Saturn are really opposite energies. So I think this, like, there's definitely challenge in this transit, but it's also has really beautiful potential. So I'll try and sum it up a bit. I'm not going to dive too deeply into all the details of it now because it's too vast. I've talked about it already, and I'm like, I'll probably be waxing on about it all year. So um, but Saturn is, we live in a Saturnian realm, so real matter is governed by Saturn. Things that have limits, have edges, are solid, all very Saturnian. Saturn rules time. It has a pretty bad rap as a planet. Like people tend to see it as a really difficult planet. And it's not the easiest energy to work with, but I've like, especially in the last few years, started to really develop a very deep appreciation for Saturn because to bring anything into form, to actually have anything in real form in this life, you have to work with Saturn. And so it gives beautiful gifts, but it's not easy. It's like it takes time, it takes hard work, it takes consistency, responsibility. Um, yeah, like it also sort of restricts and refines. So it sort of takes that like letting go and endings, all of this is governed by Saturn. So it's like our real limitations, the limitations of reality as well. So all of this can be difficult, and especially so Neptune is like almost the opposite of this in a lot of ways, because Neptune is like unity consciousness. It's really oceanic, it's ideal, it's not of this world. It's the transcendent, the perfect in a way, and also the elusive. Things aren't totally clear with Neptune. They can be quite foggy and confusing. It also is related to like addiction, so we can lose ourselves into unity consciousness in a spiritual way, but we can also do it through addictive substances and the illusion and denial that's sort of related to addiction. Um, as well, like victim, martyrship, um, and that rescuer, all of that is sort of under Neptune. That's again a bit more of the shadowy side, whereas like the light side is like feeling other people's suffering, that kind of um, you know, compassionate heart, and that uh, lack of a definite kind of personal value or personal boundary in that way, that we can really feel other people suffering and have compassion for it. But that can go into shadow, if it's like we're taking on responsibility for other people's suffering and martyring ourselves, or we're playing the victim and not wanting to take responsibility for ourselves and wanting to be rescued. It can be all sorts of sides of it. So that's quite literally the opposite of like the hard line, clear cut Saturn, who's responsible for a finite thing and a limited thing, and works hard at that. It's like I can even feel the difference of like Saturn is like really solid and kind of there's almost a coldness and a restricting and a limiting, whereas Neptune is like floaty and open and watery. So what this means, this conjunction, I think, is we're really going to be challenged to look at taking responsibility to put in the work and dedicate ourselves to bringing our dreams, Neptune, into form, Saturn. I think that's part of the potential of this transit. And I think it's probably going to challenge us to look at all sorts of ways that we don't take responsibility for ourselves or bringing our dreams into form, that we play the victim or that we take on other people's stuff and are a martyr and feel responsible for them, where the kind of boundaries are blurred in a shadowy sense, I think is going to come up a lot. And also, maybe where we don't approach real life and we prefer to hold on to some idealized image that we have, whether that's of our own success, of a partner we could have, of, the perfect job, if we could just find that perfect job, and then I wouldn't have to deal with all this crap that I'm dealing with right now in my current job. It's not to say you should stay in bad situations, but it's like getting really, really honest with yourself about like, am I using this as escapism though? Like, do I actually need to face some reality here and show up to, the limited reality that's not perfect, it's not ideal, but what can I create from that? Can I bring more beauty into that by showing up and taking responsibility? So I think that's going to be a real edge for us. I think we're already in it, so you may already be feeling, some of these themes. And as I say, it's going to continue a good bit into next year, but it's exact next spring. So the transit will sort of peak next February, and then we'll start to integrate. It'll start to ease off. Um, and actually, at this moment in time, we also have Saturn squaring Jupiter, which is different, but I feel like it's sort of it's happening against the backdrop of Saturn Neptune conjunct building. And I think it's sort of like adding a bit more catalyst to that bigger conjunction. Because Saturn square Neptune, or sorry, Jupiter square Saturn. So a square, first of all, is quite a challenging angle. So that's the relationship between the two planets, and it's really dynamic, and it is challenging. So it's not easy. That's not to say, it's bad, but it challenges us, right? So we have to kind of show up to it and work to deal with the energies, because they're sort of like they're in a really dynamic, kind of edgy flow. So it's not like it'll just come together. It's something that we kind of are going to be pushed by, poked by, and we're going to have to alchemize. And Jupiter, Saturn, again, in a way, they're quite opposite. So where Saturn restricts, Jupiter expands. Where Saturn puts limits on things, Jupiter sort of broadens things and can, sort of give a bigger perspective to things. So Jupiter is a planet of generosity, abundance, prosperity, also wisdom and like higher learning and philosophy, and also like travel, like long distance travel, anything that sort of broadens the mind. Those big experiences is very Jupiter. And we love Jupiter at the moment as a collective. I don't know if anybody saw that series on Netflix, Chaos, and it was like around the Greek gods. But I loved it. I thought it was done really well in terms of like our relationship with the archetypes at the moment. And it really showed like Jupiter or Zeus in charge, and he loves all the beautiful things. And it's all about, I won't spoil it, but basically that growth for growth's sake, having all like loads of stuff, all of the things you want, but not facing the reality that like things are actually limited and there's going to be a cost if you keep expanding out like that, or having abundance. There can actually be a real limit to that. And like obviously as a society, we're crazy about growth for growth's sake. And we exploit all our resources just to fuel growth and consumption. And we don't like to look at the downside of that. So this sort of Jupiter Saturn is looking to bring a bit more reality to where we're expanding. So, like the words that come to mind with this transit actually is like less is more. So, it's how can we, what do we need to let go of so that we can expand and grow? Where do we need to refine and, really kind of whittle down, whether that's our where we're putting our energy, where we're putting our resources, even the stuff that we have. Where do we need to shed, refine, let go, constrict, like narrow the focus so that we can expand and grow? And it also could be like a challenge to really look at the expansion and the growth that we've had over the last while and start to like integrate that, like slow down with it, take some time with it, really start to consolidate it so that it gets more solid, like it gets more deeper roots, a stronger structure. We integrate it further, and so we gain more solid wisdom from it, which is really like the Saturnian gifts. And I know for me, like I don't always do this in January, but this January I have been insane with getting rid of stuff and organizing things. And even in my own sort of in my work, like I had a real slow start to the year and I was challenged by it. Like I like to move fast. There's loads of stuff I'd love to do. Um, and yeah, I love learning. Like I'm quite a Jupiterian person in a lot of ways, but I've really felt the pull to like slow down, take your time, go through what you've already learned, and just the value of that. Like it's been hard at points because it's like the urgency of there's so much I want to do and I should be doing all the things. But actually, sometimes it is more valuable to do less and really take your time with it. And that's allowed me to like consolidate, really kind of stop and go, wow, I have learned loads over the last couple of years. There's a lot that I know, there's a lot that even ideas that I've had. And it's like, okay, so rather than that being so airy, like Jupiter's the gas giant. So it's like it expands out, but it's not necessarily huge substance to it. It can sort of be a bit superficial or a bit ungrounded. And so Saturn is challenging us to like slow down, restrict, let some of that go so that we can actually really kind of alchemize and make substantial what is really valuable. So less is more is my key phrase for Jupiter Saturn square. And it is a challenging energy, but I think there's really beautiful potential in it because it is that where we can really kind of manifest, we can create really solid, grounded abundance, learning, wisdom, growth. We can really start to uh see that in our lives, in our structures, feel it in ourselves in a more substantial way with this transit. And so that's kind of cooking now, Jupiter square Saturn. It's exact sort of it's pretty strong this month. It began last year. So it was sort of strong last year in August, September. It eased off a little then until the beginning of December. And it was actually exact on Christmas Day. So, sort of from the beginning of December, we've had this energy. Still pretty strong now. It'll ease off again then after January, and we'll probably feel it again then in June. It'll be strong again in different signs. So, yeah, really like rising to that challenge to slow down, start to let go, start to review, start to refine, whether that's your vision for growth or actually all of the expansion and growth you've already had, or as I say, it could even be physical things like really clearing out space, because then we can get more value from what we do have as well. You know, it's like there's not so much clutter. And then so the other big news for this year is that our nodes, the moon's nodes, are changing sign. And so they're moving into Pisces and Virgo. And what this means is the moon's nodes are sort of the points where we have eclipses, and they shift signs every sort of year and a half, 2 years, and they're always in opposite signs. So they're always kind of like 2 points at the opposite side of the zodiac. So they mean that they're sort of showing us what are the areas of growth. Whereas like I almost imagine them as sort of, it's a bit like not a black hole in a negative sense, but that sort of vacuum where it's like, oh, there's a real energetic pull for us in that area. And the north node is what we're sort of being pulled towards, and then the south node is what needs to be where we need to kind of release karma or let go. And so the north node is going to be in Pisces and the south node is going to be in Virgo. And yeah, they'll be there until summer next year. And I'd really encourage you, if you're maybe you know off the top of your head, but if you don't, have a look at your birth chart and see where what houses do Pisces and Virgo govern in your birth chart, because that's going to let you know like what are the areas of my life that I am being called to grow in now over the next couple of years. And so it's shifting, or the next year and a half. It's shifting. So it was Aries and um, Aries and Libra, and now it's Pisces, Virgo. And if you have a look back, so that'll be the areas of your life that you're going to be challenged in now, and growing in for the next year and a half. And the last time the nodes were in these signs was, let me see, it was from June 2006 until December 2007. So I'd also really encourage you just to have a think back when you know the houses that these signs are in and the areas of life that they're kind of related to for you. And just think back to June 2006 to December 2007 and think about those areas of life and see like what was it like for you at that time? Was there growth? Was there things you were learning? What was happening in those areas? Because often we use astrology to look forward, you know, and predict things and sort of know what's coming. And of course, it's great for that. But actually looking back like this with cycles to see when was the last time that we were having this type of relationship with the universe is such a beautiful practice, because I did this myself. Um, and I was like blown away by how clear it was what was happening for me at that time. And I'm obviously quite into astrology, and it still does that for me. Like it still brings that sense of magic and just incredulity um about sort of like the realness of our relationship with cosmic consciousness and with the cosmos. And it's such a beautiful thing. And I think we sort of get that deeper resonance maybe a little bit more sometimes from looking back, because it's like it's already happened. We've had the relationship. Whereas when we're looking forward, it's still sort of it's a bit abstract. Like it's great to know, but it's like it's still in the realm of possibility. So it really does bring a lovely magic. And it also might help you thinking forward now to what it means for you to have the nodes in Pisces and Virgo, where you're going to be challenged to grow. And this also means that our eclipses are going to be in Pisces and Virgo. So the eclipses, either a lunar eclipse or solar eclipse are like really, really powerful new moons and full moons, basically, and they're sort of like portals of transformation. So while the whole period of the nodes being in Pisces and Virgo will bring that sort of catalyst and energy of growth to these areas of your life, there'll be kind of big um portals of that during the eclipses. And so our eclipses will be in March and September of this year. I'll talk more about them as they're coming up. Um, but I think that that's the main of the big changes. So a lot of moving from earth and water into fire and air, things getting lighter, faster moving. Um, Also, would be really interesting for you to see what house Aquarius governs, because Pluto's moving into that. Do you have any planets in that? And also what house Gemini governs, because Uranus is moving into that. And do you have any planets in that? Same with Aries, as Neptune moves into that later in the year. Um, the last couple of things I'll say, a bit more sort of around the personal planets, is a big theme at the moment is Mars opposite Pluto. So we have this quite strongly now. It was a theme last year, and it's gonna kind of stay strong enough at least until spring this year. And so Mars is, of course, like the masculine. It's our drive, our ambition. It's also related to like the survival instinct. It's the warrior. It's how we go for what we want. Do we go for what we want? How we assert ourselves, how we kind of might fight for what we need, or kind of fight our corner, or even what we believe in, maybe. Um, and so Mars being opposite Pluto, Pluto initiates, it transforms, it you know, em empowers, but also can really just bring in power dynamics, sometimes like a bit of powerlessness around what it's aspecting. And so I think Pluto opposite Mars, and I know this was a big theme last year for me, and I was seeing it a lot with like friends and clients. Um, the like being challenged to really transform our the masculine within us, and this is for both men and women. So that brings in like how we relate to men, the father complex, like all of these things are going to be in there in some way. But I think really at the core it's like initiating your internal masculine. So, like, how do you go for what you want? Or do you go for what you want? Is you going for what you want conditional? It's like, oh, well, it's too hard at the first sign of frustration. Maybe that kind of that fiery drive of Mars drops. And so you kind of only go for what you want if it's easy. Or maybe you go for what you want too much. Maybe you're a bit of a bully and you go a bit too hard and that drive's a bit too strong. But all of this of how we assert ourselves, how we relate to the masculine within ourselves and outside of ourselves is really being sort of brought up right now to be transformed and to be refined and initiated so there can be a higher expression. But it's not easy. Like Pluto's never easy. Pluto is like one of the most challenging aspects. So yeah, there could be a lot of father wounds being opened up, wounds around the masculine being opened up so that the healing can come in, so that we can, bring alchemy to them. Um, and yeah, we're going to be continuing with this until I'd say for most of this year, but as I say, it's really strong now in January and will be again around April in spring. Mars is also retrograde at the moment. So anytime a planet goes retrograde, it's sort of like the outward expression of that can be stifled and challenged. It's really a call to go inward. And so with Mars, this is difficult because Mars is quite fast moving. It's about doing, it's about action, it's about making things happen. Um, so we could feel some frustration and delays at the moment, but it's a really beautiful time to be inquiring around all of these Martian themes. And even your own warrior, like how do you really what sort of like what do you want to be a warrior for? what would it look like if you were a warrior, and where do you bitch out basically and play victim, rather than staying strong and fighting for what your heart desires, what you believe in, what you really want, what your inner child needs, like, whatever it might be. Or also the other side is like, do you overpower people? Are you a bit of a um, like the toddler comes to mind, like toddler time is really Martian time where we're discovering our will and our sense of ourselves as an individual, and sort of the terrible twos of like, no, I want this. I'm not going to do that. Like, that's sort of a very immature expression of Mars, beautiful as it develops if you're a toddler, but some of us still have that expression of Mars, not so beautiful if you're an adult. So, we could also be looking at that, like, where do we get a bit tantrumy or a bit sort of entitled or pushy about what we want? And as Mars is retrograde, it's just a really good time to be introspective with that and maybe looking at like reviewing 2024 around these themes and journaling a bit on it. And Mars will go direct at the end of February, so we have a little bit longer with the retrograde, but not too much longer. And then Venus will be retrograde from the 1st of March to the 12th of April. So again, like the same is sort of true then with the Venusian energy, that's a beautiful time to really go within with Venus, how we receive the feminine, beauty, self-worth, how we value things, what we value, pleasure, love, creativity in a way. And Venus is going to be in Pisces. So Venus is really happy in Pisces. It's quite beautiful. Um, and it's also that theme of like, it's almost like a spiritual sense of Venus, then. It's like themes of unconditional love. But it can also be boundaryless. So do we get our value from other people? Do we give too much? Those things might come up as well. Venus is in Pisces until the 30th of April. And so it'll retrograde in Pisces. It'll retrograde from the 1st of March till the 12th of April. So I think that's everything really for this year, at least for the moment. As always, I'd be so interested in how this resonates. Does it resonate? If you have any questions or what comes to mind, really encourage you to have a look at your personal chart and just notice for yourself like what's going to be coming up this year. If you're not sure how to do that, or you'd just really like someone to do it for you, or you really want to dive deep and you'd actually love to look really in depth at your own personal transits, and what this year is calling in for you and challenging and activating for you, you can of course get in touch with me for a full personal reading, or my website is linked in my Instagram homepage, and you'll find it there in the bio if you want to have a look at what a personal reading entails. But I'm wishing everyone a really beautiful 2025. Let me know how you're getting on, and if you're feeling any of this energy already. Especially around the Saturn, I'm find myself quite mesmerized with Saturn at the moment because I'm just feeling it so strongly and the potential of it as it squares Jupiter and as it builds to its conjunction with Neptune. So if you have any thoughts or reflections on that, I'd really love to hear them. But for now, look after yourselves, and thanks for watching.